It's the 8th of September 1888, in Spitalfields, London. Annie Chapman, a lady of the night, leans up against the wall, feeling the cool air of an early September morning, waiting for her next customer. A gentleman caller inquires of her services, before they both disappear into her office. Annie Chapman will never be seen alive again. Between August and November 1888, 5 prostitutes are murdered and brutally disemboweled in Whitechapel, East London. After the first 2 murders, Scotland Yard receives a letter claiming to be from the killer, boasting about the murders and mocking the police, ending the letter with, "Good luck, yours, Jack the Ripper." The case of Jack the Ripper transfixes Victorian public, the murderer never being arrested and their identity being debated to this day. Hello and welcome to the channel. I am the Knight of History, and this is part number 5 of a 5-part series on the Age of Reform. This time we're going to be talking about how law and order was finally brought to the Victorian streets and thankfully making it a less dangerous and safer place. So please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Now let's get into this. Throughout history, urbanization has always brought an increase in crime and social disorder. This period in Britain was no different. The smaller settlements were able to police themselves, but this was not the case with the growing cities, and the Industrial Revolution made the cities grow. As cities and towns filled themselves with inhabitants who were completely strangers to one another, crimes became more and more common. Industrial change also caused periods of waves of unemployment, which led to riots and lawlessness, which in 1812 led to the one and only assassination of a British Prime Minister, Spencer Perceval, who was shot by a dispossessed businessman. Crime was growing and public concern was growing as well in the 19th century. Statistics published by the government appeared to show an increase in crime through the 1830s and 1840s. Things were not looking good for the Victorian British. By 1843, it was reported in the House of Commons that the loss of money from thieves and robbery in Liverpool alone summed up to a massive £700,000. Criminal activity seemed to centre around the Rookeys, an area of slum housing made up with dark, narrow alleyways and dilapidated buildings. Some of the worst Rookeys were in London, with names such as Jacob's Island, Rat's Castle, and Devil's Acre. In 1839, the author Charles Dickens described London's Rookey containing men and women in every variety of scanty and dirty appeal, lounging, scolding, drinking, smoking, squabbling, fighting, and swearing. Robert Peel, the Home Secretary in 1829, passed the Metropolitan Police Act to establish a force of 1,000 full-time police officers in London to help curtail the crime. They were centrally managed from the head office in Whitehall called Scotland Yard. London had already 450 unpaid parish constables. However, they were disorganised and too few in number to be able to cope with the numerous amount of crimes that were taking place. The Metropolitan Police Constables had to be 5'7", 170 centimeters tall, and could be identified by their uniform, blue tailcoat, belt, and a metal-lined top hat. Their stiff collars also prevented officers from being strangled. So common was strangulation back then. However, Peel did not want them to be seen as military forces, so instead of being armed with guns, they were armed with truncheons, big wooden sticks. policemen had the nicknames of bobbies or peelers in honor of their founder, Robert Peel. By 1856, police forces were made mandatory across England. This caused resentment throughout some cities, rioting in towns. People saw the police as a sign of government tyranny. Nevertheless, by the 1900s, Britain had 47,000 policemen working across 243 separate forces. Crime stats are difficult to trust from back then, but it's generally believed that crime decreased in the second half of that century, the 19th century. Back in 1861, there was 20 per 1,000 people being arrested every single year. But by 1891, that number had reduced to just 15, whilst the murder rate had reduced from 1.7 out of every 100,000 in the 1860s to 1 in every 100,000 by the 1890s. But what happened to those people that were being caught and arrested? What happened to those imprisoned? In 1813, a Quaker philanthropist, Elizabeth Fry, visited one of London's most notorious prisons, Newgate. Fry was outraged by what she saw, with 300 prisoners cooking, washing, and living in just 2 cells. They were poorly clothed and slept on the floor, lined with straw. That was their bed. Some were even looking after newborn babies, naked and crying in the cold. Fry returned the next day with food and clothing for the women. Fry encouraged the prisons to establish a schooling system for prison children and keep prisoners occupied with productive work such as sewing or knitting. She traveled the country campaigning for prison reform and became an expert on the subject. Elizabeth Fry is actually kind of one of my heroes because Parliament investigated the prison conditions because of her. Fry was invited to present the evidence that was found in Parliament. She was the first ever woman to do so. Throughout British history, no other woman had been invited to present anything in front of British Parliament. Robert Peel greatly admired Fry for her campaigns, inspiring him to pass the Gallows Act of 1823, introducing prison inspections, doctor visits, school for prison children, and even payment of jailers, because until that point, jailers had actually been paid by the prisoners themselves. Don't get me wrong here, I know that the Age of Reform isn't the most interesting part of history. Without the Age of Reform though, it would be hard to see what life would be like today in Britain, and really across the world. Would there be more crime? Would we be forced to work 90 hours a week? Would we be allowed to have a say in the vote of a government? Would we have running water or sewers? At the end of the day, we have a 5-day week, police forces, workers' rights, and so much more due to this period in history. So I really hope that you actually appreciated this series and learned something along the way. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The more you know.